Hello and welcome to a new episode of our Deep Dive series. This episode is brought to you by the Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, also known as the AWCBC. We're taking a deep dive today into, well, a really tough topic that's affected so many across Canada this year. The 2025 wildfire season, just incredibly intense.
It really has been.
We've been looking through this really useful article from the AWCBC. It's called Impact of the 2025 Canadian Wildfire Season on Workers' Compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal here, is to really try and understand what this huge, widespread event means. Not just the headlines, but like what it means for the people actually working out there and for the compensation systems meant to protect them.
Yeah, and that article really highlights the sheer scale. Unprecedented almost doesn't cover it. We're talking over 2.6 million hectares burned by early June.
Wow. 2.6 million.
It's a massive area. And crucially, it wasn't just one spot. Fires were burning intensely right across the map, from BC all the way out to Newfoundland.
That number is just, staggering, especially so early. And the article links it back to that record heat and the really, really dry conditions we saw.
Exactly. Which led to, huge consequences. Mass evacuations, entire towns emptied. And those air quality warnings, they became almost constant in major cities, even ones far from the actual flames.
Right. Not just a local problem.
Not at all. And while Canada knows wildfires, this year felt different. The scale, yes, but also how many places were hit hard all at once. That's what's creating these significant ripple effects for workers and for the compensation boards.
Okay, so given that backdrop, this huge scale, these extreme conditions, let's maybe unpack the specific health and safety risks workers faced. The article gets into quite a bit of detail there.
It does, and it starts naturally with the frontline responders, the firefighters. Their risks are immediate, very acute.
Right.
You've got the danger of serious injuries, burns, obviously, but also fractures or the risk of falling trees. The article actually mentions a specific serious injury in Manitoba from that. Plus, just the extreme heat exhaustion. And breathing in that heavy smoke constantly, right at the source, it's incredibly taxing.
And that smoke danger wasn't just for the firefighters, was it? The article points to lots of other workers being exposed.
Oh, absolutely. Think about all the outdoor workers. Utility crews out there trying to fix lines, construction crews, people in agriculture, transport. They were all breathing in that thick wildfire smoke, sometimes for weeks. And we're talking about fine particulate matter, PM 2.5. Tiny stuff that gets deep into your lungs.
So that can trigger things or make existing conditions worse.
Exactly. The source connects it to triggering or worsening conditions like asthma, bronchitis. And there are concerns about potential links to heart issues too, cardiovascular problems.
And then you add the heat on top of the smoke, that record heat we had.
Right, a really dangerous mix. Heat stroke, dehydration, those are serious risks on their own, especially with hard physical work. Put that together with breathing difficulties from smoke. It's a compounded hazard.
Sounds incredibly tough physically, but the article also mentioned the psychological side of things.
Yes, and that's crucial. It's not just the physical toll. There's PTSD, burnout, affecting firefighters, sure, but also people working in evacuation centers, dealing with traumatized people, and the crews doing the cleanup afterwards. It's a lot to handle.
So with all these added risks affecting so many different kinds of workers, I guess it's not surprising that the workers' compensation boards are feeling the impact directly.
No, not at all. The article states there's been a notable uptick. There are words and claims directly linked to the wildfires.
Okay, what kind of claims are we seeing?
Well, it mirrors the risks. Claims for respiratory problems, asthma, bronchitis tied to the smoke, heat-related injuries, definitely, and trauma cases like burns or fractures from the emergency response work.
And you mentioned the psychological impact. Are mental health claims coming through too?
Yes. Things like PTSD. The article notes these are being seen, and often for first responders, there's something called presumptive legislation.
Right, I've heard of that. It sort of assumes a condition is work-related for certain jobs.
Exactly. It simplifies things for, say, a firefighter claiming PTSD. But another point the article raises is the potential for occupational disease claims down the line. Things from chronic exposure that might not show up right away.
That adds another layer of complexity, I imagine. So how are employers and the WCBs actually coping? What actions are they taking right now?
Well, the source outlines some pretty urgent responses. Employers are monitoring air quality indexes, AQIs, really closely, adjusting work schedules, sometimes stopping work altogether if it's too hazardous,
Makes sense.
and making sure workers have the right gear, like N95 masks fitted properly, plus enforcing basics like hydration, rest breaks, especially that heat and smoke combo.
And the compensation boards, are they changing how they operate?
They've had to adapt quickly, setting up specific resources just for wildfire claims, trying to speed up processing, especially for those emergency responders. They're also pushing awareness of mental health supports. And importantly, the article says they're reviewing their own policies, looking at whether they need updates to handle these kinds of large-scale climate events better.
The article also mentions something called the Interjurisdictional Agreement, the IJA. How does that fit in?
Yes, the IJA is really important here. It's basically an agreement between the provinces and territories that makes sure workers are covered even if they cross borders to help out.
Okay, so like firefighters coming from another province?
Exactly. It ensures their compensation coverage is seamless no matter where they're deployed to fight the fires. It's vital for that kind of national response.
So looking beyond the immediate response, this whole situation seems to be highlighting some bigger, maybe longer-term challenges for the workers' compensation system, doesn't it?
It really does. The article points out some key areas. One is the lack of consistent, defined safety limits for things like wildfire smoke exposure or extreme heat across all the provinces.
So no single standard.
Not everywhere, no. There's a call for more regulatory clarity there, for consistent protection. Another big issue the article raises is about who's actually covered.
How so?
Well, think about volunteer firefighters or indigenous responders who might work outside typical government structures, or even precarious workers, maybe in agriculture, who might fall through the cracks of traditional coverage.
Right. So are they protected?
It can be complicated. There are definitely growing calls, amplified by this year, to look at broadening eligibility to make sure everyone facing these risks is covered.
And managing this surge in claims, especially complex ones, that must put a financial strain on the system.
For sure. A huge volume of claims, particularly ones that might involve long-term care for occupational diseases or mental health, can really stress the accident funds WCBs rely on.
So potentially needing changes to funding models down the road.
The article suggests it might prompt that conversation.
Yeah.
Thinking about how to fund the system sustainably with these kinds of events becoming, well, more common.
And one last challenge. If everyone in an area is breathing smoke, how do you prove an illness is specifically work-related?
That's a really tricky one, the article points out, distinguishing general environmental exposure from specific workplace exposure. It's a big administrative and medical hurdle. Defining that clearly is a major task.
So it sounds like the big takeaway from the article is that the system needs to adapt fundamentally.
I think that's the core message. It can't just be about handling claims after the fact. As these climate-driven disasters get more frequent, more severe, the compensation system needs to be part of the broader effort, supporting prevention, preparedness, building resilience in communities.
Moving from just reaction to proactive resilience.
Exactly. Recognizing that worker safety is tied up with how well the whole community can handle these events.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. It really frames the challenge ahead. Thank you for walking us through all of that. It gives a much clearer picture. For more information, check out the article Impact of the 2025 Canadian Wildfire Season on Workers' Compensation, available on the AWCBC website.